All right, so hello. Welcome back into my kitchen. Today we are doing up a stew. It's finally, I'll call it winter here. It's just about freezing outside and gonna get colder all night. We are doing a mushroom stew. So, on its own, this is technically vegan. I say technically because you've got to watch your fats. In my case, I'm going to use olive oil. If you choose to use butter, obviously it's no longer vegan. If you choose to use chicken stock instead of making your own vegetable stock, it's now just mushroom stew. It's really up to you. And then we're going to top it with put it over polenta. You could just as easily use, I'm thinking of a really nice buttered like egg noodle, maybe some mashed potatoes. I was really tempted. The potatoes I probably should use them. I think this one's growing, but we'll do polenta. So we'll start off. I have a pound of mushrooms. This serves two. If you wanted more than two, you need a lot of mushrooms. You don't think about it, but mushrooms really, honestly, don't have any calories in them. So, like, all the things you would cook, like, yeah, there's no calories. So you gotta do something else to eat. I did go for, and you can see the size of my hand in here. So I went for much larger mushrooms. I went for the larger ones, but not the big portobello ones you buy to make like little mini pizzas on, because the ones to make little mini pizzas on are really expensive, and these are not. Let's rinse these off. We're going to chop them up, not slice them. Again, this is stew, so you've got to think it's going to end up on your spoon, so spoon shapes. Put these to the side here. As I said before, we're using a pound. I think 8 ounces a person serving is about right. I guess it's a little less because obviously I'm cutting off the ends. And again, like a lot of other recipes, you don't need to use the newest, freshest mushrooms here. Your older mushrooms might give you a little extra flavor. And, remember also mushrooms shrink in the spoon, so actually, here's the size spoon I would be eating with. My mushroom does fit on the spoon. That's what I'm looking for. If the mushroom is bigger than the spoon, you've done it wrong. They will shrink a little bit as we cook them, so that's okay. But it does make you think, almost all the time in these recipes, they'll ask you to do a lot of things. It's not just because they like to watch you try and use a lot of equipment. Once we get to the mushrooms cut, I will just get them on the stove. We'll switch the camera so you can see it, and we'll talk through the rest of the recipe. This is one of the longer steps. No potatoes were harmed in the making of this recipe. In fact, there are no potatoes anywhere in this recipe. It is... Yeah, no, there are no potatoes at all. I'm going to throw these all back in my dish so I can carry them over. Let's switch our screens. Where is my mouse? All right. Move the microphone. Okay, so what we're going to do here, hopefully not trip myself over my own cable, we're going to put about a 1/4 cup of water in this dish. We're going to add a little bit of olive oil, salt and pepper, and then we'll throw the mushrooms in. You don't have to be too exact. I just vaguely look for a 1/4 cup. You want a little bit because it helps the mushrooms cook. You don't want a lot because you have to cook off all that water. And we're using olive oil here. We're not using butter. If you, say, didn't care about the veganness of this, you would use butter. Solid pinch of salt. We'll throw the mushrooms in, and then a nice solid pinch of black pepper. Turn my fan on. When you're trying to evaporate liquid, fans are amazing. Especially in my case, because this fan that's over the stove is a outside exhaust fan. In goes our pound of mushrooms. So, other important things to think about. You want to not cover this. It's going to take a few minutes to start steaming, and then it's going to release a ton of water really fast, and then that water is going to evaporate. The little bit of water in the pan increases heat transference. It's much like if you were on a computer, you use thermal paste to connect things together. Water is our thermal paste here, except it tastes better. So we're going to give this a minute or two for these to get to boiling. And they will, with the amount of liquid they'll release, they will actually boil. Honestly, the rest of our recipe is pretty simple. We're going to let these go for about 10 or 15 minutes. We're going to dice a couple of carrots, a shallot or two. And then once these are done cooking, we'll pull them out and throw in our shallot and carrots, some water and some wine. Make a nice sauce. Remove the solids out of that. Throw back in our mushrooms. Throw in a little bit of onion. Let it go for another 10 minutes, and then it'll be ready to eat. The reason I chose this pan, I don't need its volume. I just wanted a large flat surface area that's going to really help the mushrooms do their thing better. Um, the only Dutch oven I have that would have worked is like huge. It's 8 quarts. So use what you got. So we're already at more water in the pan than when we started. That's good. Part of what's going to make this stew flavorful is we need to really concentrate our flavors. So that means pure water needs to go away. What's left behind is flavor. And while these simmer out, we're going to watch our liquid at the bottom get darker and darker and darker. I chose a really light bottomed pan, so hopefully you can see the transition as it happens. That darkness is basically mushroom flavor, so we want it. And this is the step that takes time that you need to take. I think I've said basically every time I've cooked mushrooms, like, this takes time and you must let it happen. If you rush this along, you end up with some really bad, weak flavor. And who wants weak flavor? And for the same reason, you don't want to actually drain off this liquid because it's a lot of mushroom flavor in the liquid. There's just a lot of water. So we're just going to get rid of the water and leave behind mushroom. Our other little pieces to amp the flavor up, we've got, I've got some extra dried mushrooms that are going to go in when we're making the broth base. We're going to throw in red wine, some tomato, some soy sauce, some miso. I have instant miso. Basically a lot of your traditional flavor enhancing items, just, back to back to back to back. While this is simmering down, you can really actually see now this was a solid layer of mushrooms and now it's really not. I'm going to peel and I'm going to dice a couple of carrots. These carrots will go in with our wine and water to help give some flavor. Depending on your mood and your opinion, you're going to take these back out at the end. So if I had put the heat up too high right now, I'll boil the water off very quickly, but there'll still be extra liquid in the mushrooms. I want to give them more time, so by going a little slower, you're going to get a greater liquid extraction out of them, which is important because again, we're trying to concentrate flavors, So we need to remove a lot of liquid so that we can build our flavorful base, and then the mushrooms will reabsorb some of that liquid in the end, but it'll be flavor and not just mushroom water. Alright, our liquid is really darkening, that's great. I stir these around for two reasons. One, it helps change what surface is touching the bottom, so it helps if there's anything extra to get out of it. Two, it recoats all the mushrooms, so the steam evaporates off more surfaces, which means it evaporates just a pinch quicker. As I said before, I'm making polenta, and it's instant polenta, so there's no real work for me. If I was making mashed potatoes, this is where I would be dicing my potatoes and getting them on the pot that's not sitting here to boil. But we're not doing it. And polenta just comes in a bag where I measure out, a quarter cup. We are basically, two things. If you were to say, hey, I was trying to saute mushrooms to make like a quiche, this is basically where you stop and you pull them out. If I was doing them for a burger, I'd go maybe another minute. We're doing them for a stew here. We're going to give them probably 2 or 3 more minutes. I want to actually get them a little browned on the outside. Almost crunchy. Not sure how well you can hear, but the sizzle noise has changed. It's moved from the sizzle of water simmering to now the oil is sizzling in the pan as the mushrooms get above 212. Hopefully our pan's going to turn nice and dark brown here. That's just aromatics forming. That's called the fond. It's one of the things that you tend to deglaze your pan with either wine, actually it's going to be wine in this case, or a stock or water. That's a lot of flavor compounds that get stuck on the pan. You obviously don't want to leave them in the pan when you go to eat them. As you can see from before, the mushrooms have shrunk, which means that even the pieces that were as big as your spoon now would fit this plus more stuff on your spoon before it goes in the into your mouth. It's important to remember what ingredients shrink and which ones don't when you're cooking. You know, before I said this was hard because it takes forever, this is the hardest couple minutes. Like, this is where it's the difference between an okay dish and a great dish. All right, so they're pretty good. I'm going to pull the mushrooms out. I'm going to put the carrots in. While the carrots go for a minute here, I'm going to mince up a shallot and throw it into. Gonna add a little more olive oil. And I'm gonna keep my heat pretty low. I'm not trying to smoke anything. Now the point of doing this before we were to say add our wine is we're giving a chance for these vegetables to get up above boiling, up above that 212 mark on the outside. That's going to help release a little bit of their flavor. Your browning reaction doesn't happen until above 212, and that browning reaction creates a lot of flavor compounds. The browning reaction also is known to cause cancer in the state of California. I don't live in California. Give this just one more minute. We'll throw some garlic in at that point. Again, if you notice, we've moved basically from largest to smallest. The larger ingredients take longer to start cooking, get a little bit of Maillard reaction going. I'm not trying to super heavily brown anything. That's not my goal here. A lot of the color in the dish is going to come from the red wine and the mushrooms themselves. But obviously a little extra flavor is always a bonus. Starting to get a little bit of color. That's good. You have to pay attention. Your shallots or onions will turn orange when you put carrots with them because they're absorbing carrot liquid. So your first color change isn't actually them cooking, it's them absorbing carrot. Okay, I'm going to put these kind of in a ring so that they get a bunch of heat but not all the heat. We're going to leave the center empty. Put in our garlic. I'm going to just leave it sit there for the minute. It obviously, I used garlic here, so there's liquid in that. I want that liquid to boil off before I try and do anything else. And obviously I put it in the hottest region of my pan so that it does that fastest. It's also a good sign for you when you do this and what bubbles up is really dark. This is basically I've deglazed that center 2 inches of the pan. And what's come back from that deglazing is something that is got some color to it, which is good. All right. Now we can mix it in. We're going to add, in about a minute, we're going to add another tablespoon or so of oil and then some flour and begin building what is a roux. Except in our case, I'm using red wine and water instead of butter and like milk. As you can see, we're starting to get some nice bits of color in the bottom of the pan. That's good, that's flavor. Means I've got about a minute to go. Maybe a minute, maybe a little less. Add in flour, make our base, add in, it's about half a cup of red wine. I'm not using a measuring cup, I'm pouring straight from the bottle. And then we're going to add about 2 cups of water. Then a few more aromatics. We're going to keep the lid off and let it go for about 10 minutes. While we're doing that, we're going to make our polenta. That looks good. Couple tablespoons of oil. This is about a tablespoon and a half of flour. Blend this all together. It's going to immediately make the bottom of my pan a sticky mess. Now, I will admit I was smart earlier. I already uncorked my wine because otherwise I would be in for some trouble. As I said before, I'm looking for half a cup. I don't know what half a cup is. So we'll mix in this much and then that much again. Okay, that did an amazing job at getting some of the flour off the bottom of the pan. Actually smells really good. We're actually going to do that one more time. I think that it was a little light. Then I'm going to make the rest of our sauce together, and then I am going to pour myself a glass of wine. The reason I am doing this in batches is I want to keep the temperature in my pan close to that boiling point, and the wine is at drinking temperature, so it's 50, 55 degrees Fahrenheit. So again, mix this together. We're going to work on adding, this is roughly 2 cups of water. Again, I'm going to do this in 4 or 5 batches. The point behind it is I don't want to end up with a pile of lumps. Also, if you have 2 very different viscosities of liquid, it becomes a mess when you stir it. The thin one will splosh over the thick one, and you'll just get like splatters everywhere. As you can see, this is really kind of a nice color. This is almost the right color for the stew in and of itself. We've still got obviously some baking time here. I'm going to let this get back up to a simmer, and then we're going to keep adding liquid. This becomes easier and easier because there's more liquid in the pan and you're adding less to it. It gets back up faster. We're going to get this back up to a boil. We're going to leave this uncovered. I'm going to add a couple more spices to it. And then what our goal will be is we're going to let this simmer all the way down until it's the consistency of what would be heavy cream. In the meantime, I'm going to put a pan here and we're going to start working on polenta. Now, because I'm making instant polenta and not like long cooked polenta, I'm only making enough for tonight. This is 2 servings. I'm only making 1 of the polenta. I can just make the polenta again later in the week when I eat the rest of the stew. So we're throwing in, this is a teaspoon of a Italian seasoning blend, so basil, thyme, oregano. We're gonna grab about a tablespoon of soy sauce. not going to measure this, but we're adding, give or take, half a tablespoon of miso paste. I have instant miso paste for making soup. That's what I'm using. It's obviously cup sized. If you have the right proper stuff, I would use it. I made soy sauce is salt. If you notice, I didn't add any salt to the dish yet. That soy sauce is the salt I'm adding. So we're going to make the small serving of polenta. So I'm just following the instructions that are on my bag. 2 cups of water, tablespoon in this case of oil, pinch of salt, and then once it gets to a boil, we'll add our polenta and turn the heat off. And just think, soy sauce is 90% salt and 10% MSG. What more could you want in life? This is really where I have to make a decision. I'm going to leave the carrots in because, you know what, I'll be a little healthier and have carrots and mushrooms in my stew. You could strain out the carrots right now and leave just a smooth sauce behind. If you were serving this at a fancy dinner, I probably would strain out the carrots, but I'm not fancy. If you had those frozen mini pearl onions, I would add like a half cup of them now. I don't normally keep them in. I don't really like pearl onions, which is funny because I like onions. So I'm going to dice up half of a sweet onion. We're going to throw this in the dish. It's going to kind of simmer along for a few minutes. We're going to add back in our mushrooms. We're going to get it down to stew consistency. That's where I'm going to really flavor and decide if I need more salt or more this or more that. At which point our polenta will hopefully be all ready, and we'll have dinner. Now, as you cook onions, they will release liquid, which is why I'm doing it now. What this really enables is, as the onions release a little bit of liquid, it'll evaporate back. It'll have time to evaporate out before you would add your final ingredients. So again, I'm going to let this get all the way back up to a boil. Or otherwise roughly at the consistency I would like. Because we're serving it over polenta, I want it to be really thick. I want this is like not soup in a bowl, like, but soup over things. Again, I'm going to give this... Honestly, I'm going to give this until we're cooked the polenta. That's when this soup's going to be ready. If at any point I really decide there's truly too little liquid, I will just add a little more water back in, but I don't think it's going to be a real problem. I considered tomato paste, but I don't have any right now. I don't know how I don't have any. But tomato paste would definitely be one of your other classic aromatics to add, which is, you know, concentrated tomato sauce. Actually, do I have? Okay, that's a lie. In the back of my pantry, I did have one little can of tomato paste. But for a lot of reasons, I don't want to add whole tomatoes. Your biggest reason is that you're looking for a little flavor. You don't want tomato liquid, because tomatoes are also one of those very watery vegetables. You know, a tablespoon of tomato paste is like 2 tomatoes worth of tomato. Okay, our water is simmering for the polenta. Got a different spoon to stir it with. I add it slowly because otherwise you have a good risk of foaming over the pot. According to my directions, we are stir for 3 minutes and then turn off the heat and wait 5 minutes. Our stew is like at almost the perfect consistency. Gonna add back in the mushrooms. Set my timer so I know how long I'm supposed to stir this polenta. Do two-handed stirring. Turn this way down. The polenta is starting to pull away from the edges of the pot, which is good. It means I'm almost done stirring, and I can turn the heat off. My hand is tired. This reminds me why I make mashed potatoes all the time and not polenta. Alright, turn the heat off on the polenta. I've turned the heat off on the stew. I'm going to cover the polenta for the 5 minutes. I mean, it is basically, so let me... So it's instant polenta. It kind of honestly looks and behaves like mashed potato flakes, except they're a lot finer. I see polenta two ways. I see it like that, the way we have it here, and I see it in these logs. Here, let me show you this, and maybe this is closer to what you have. Put some on the lid here. So like this is what would be a step thicker. This is, it's hard to see, grits, which are corn done a little thicker. Grits is a breakfast food for me. You cook it with a little bacon and some cheese. Polenta is this really fine Italian stuff. And actually, okay, that's a lie. I was going to try and find my extra thick grits, but I can't find them. They come in like one step coarser than that, but I don't have them. Polenta tastes like polenta. Tastes like corn. I know that's stunning because it's corn. Let me clear my thing off here. We're going to think about how to plate this a little bit. And then I'm going to eat. And y'all can eat too, but you can't eat this because you aren't here. We're going to use my red plate because I think my red plate will have it all contrast really nicely. I'm going to give it just one more minute for the stew to cool, just a little more so it's something I can eat. The polenta still technically has one more minute on it. I want to give it its full time. Otherwise it really won't set up, and I want to kind of lay a nice layer of polenta and then the stew on top so it looks fancy, like I know what I'm doing. And I can't do that if it's not all the way cooked. All right, that looks really good. I added my little bit of oil right at the end. If you weren't concerned about being vegan, you could add butter. I'm going to swirl this out. I'm going to pretend I know what I'm doing and make it look like I know what I'm doing. And we're going to ladle in a nice chunk in the middle. A little bit of extra sauce. Gonna have a glass of red wine with it. But here is dinner. I hope you enjoyed. I will see you next Sunday, and happy cooking.